Hi, Emily here from Homemade Emily Jane, and today I'm very excited to share with you all of the Homemade Emily Jane quilt patterns that include half square triangles. Now, regardless of how long you've spent quilting, you might have heard of the half square triangle. It is one of the most iconic quilt blocks when it comes to making a quilt. And I have quite a few quilt patterns that use various techniques in making half square triangles, and I'm really excited to share them with you today. Whether you're a beginner just getting started or you've been quilting for years, you might learn something new. Many of the different quilt patterns that I have really do offer different techniques depending on the design. So stick around to the end of this video and I'll share with you a few different techniques and their tutorials for making the various half square triangle blocks that I'm going to share with you today. Now, before I dive into all of these half square triangle quilt patterns, I'll let you know they're all available in my shop at homemadeemilyjane.com. You can purchase either the paper patterns or the digital PDF download that you can get instantly. As I go through all these different patterns, you'll notice that they're all very unique, and I'd love to hear which one's your favorite. Make sure you drop a comment below to tell me which half square triangle quilt pattern you like the best. The first quilt pattern I want to share with you is the connector quilt pattern. This was actually the very first quilt pattern in my shop, and it's one that I'm very proud of. The connector quilt pattern is actually a sampler quilt. So you'll learn how to make flying geese, you'll learn how to make half square triangles using the 4 at a time method, and you'll use the stitch and flip technique for making some other blocks as well. So the connector quilt pattern is really fun, it's great for learning new skills, and it includes 5 sizes. If you want to learn a few different techniques, the connector quilt pattern is perfect for you. Next up is the sail quilt pattern. The sail quilt pattern is the one that I think of when I first think of a half square triangle quilt. The entire quilt is composed of just 2 different sizes of half square triangles. The large half square triangles are made using the 2 at a time method, and the smaller half square triangles utilize the magic 8 half square triangle method. So this is a really great pattern if you want to learn both of those techniques and really get a good mastery of them. One thing I love about the sail quilt pattern is that you can use 10-inch squares like a layer cake, or you can use 1/3 yard cuts if you're using fabric off the bolt. Next up is the triangular quilt pattern. This one is a little bit trickier because it involves lots of small pieces. The triangular pattern includes 5 different sizes of half square triangles, all made using the 4 at a time half square triangle method. The pattern includes 4 sizes from wall hanging all the way up to bed size. If you're looking for a little bit more of a challenge with your half square triangle quilts, triangular is the one that you want to try. Next up is the Brazen quilt pattern. This quilt pattern is actually the quilt that is shown right behind me. It is a bold and dynamic design that uses small half square triangles in the blocks, and then the blocks are actually composed of some large half square triangles for that effect. The smaller half square triangles in this pattern are made using the magic 8 method, and then the larger ones are just simply made 1 at a time. The pattern includes 4 sizes, baby through bed size, and also includes alternate AccuQuilt instructions if you're interested in that. Another AccuQuilt friendly half square triangle quilt pattern is the Solitaire quilt pattern. This is the one I always recommend to beginners that ask me about making their first quilt. It uses half square triangles and is very simple to make. The half square triangle method used in the Solitaire quilt pattern is the magic 8 half square triangle. The half square triangles in this pattern can be made using yardage or with a stack of 10-inch squares. Solitaire is a quick and easy quilt pattern, and it includes 5 different sizes from baby all the way to king and queen bed sizes. And last but not least is the Cirrus quilt pattern. Now, I'll be honest, I was debating whether or not to even include this because it doesn't use a typical half square triangle technique. It uses pieced blocks that you then sew together into triangles that eventually come to look a little bit like flying geese. It's a modern pattern. It includes 2 different versions, the gingham style or the scrappy version, which has become my personal favorite. If you want to make a scrappy Cirrus quilt pattern, you can do it using 5-inch squares or 10-inch squares that you then cut down into 5 inches. And again, the Cirrus pattern includes 4 sizes from baby to bed size. I hope you loved learning about these various half square triangle quilt patterns. Now let me dive into some of the techniques that are included in some of these patterns. All of the patterns include a link to a video tutorial, which I can also link for you here as well. So check the description below for lots more details. The first method that I want to share with you is the simple 2 at a time method. The 2 at a time method is the easiest way to make a half square triangle, and it was the method that I first learned. You can find the tutorial right here for the easiest way to make a half square triangle. Next up, let's move to the 4 at a time method. This one I really enjoy because it involves sewing on the straight grains, but then you do cut on the bias. So you do have to be a little bit more careful with that when you go to piece the triangles together. The 4 at a time method is another super versatile method, and you can find the tutorial for that right here. And one of my absolute favorites is the Magic 8 half square triangle. You can find the tutorial for the Magic 8 half square triangles right here. This is so versatile and one of my favorite options. And finally, if you're an AccuQuilt user like myself, make sure you check out my AccuQuilt tutorial. I love using my AccuQuilt for half square triangles simply because the cut is perfect and it does not involve trimming down after sewing, as long as you can sew pretty accurately. So I hope these tutorials you find super helpful as you make your next half square triangle quilt pattern. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and check out homadeemilyjane.com for lots more quilting tips, tricks, tutorials, and of course quilt patterns. You can find all of these patterns in my shop at homadeemilyjane.com/shop. Thanks so much for watching. Happy sewing!